York has earned the reputation as one of America's most haunted cities, home to North America's largest mass grave site and the former stomping grounds of some of history's creepiest characters and writers. There is no shortage of ghost sightings and stories. I'm Annamaria Chen, and today I'm meeting up with a tour guide from Ghosts of New York Walking Tours, the city's oldest ghost tour company, to check out some of these haunted places myself. All right, I'm here with our tour guide for the day, Jamie Owens, and she's actually going to be taking us on her favorite tour, Peter Stuyvesant and his ghostly friends of the East Village. Now, the stories that we're going to hear today are a lot more than just folklore and urban legends. They're actually rooted in a lot of history and fact. So can you tell us some background on how these ghost walking tours got started and, the credentials of founder and historian Dr. Phil?
Wow, Dr. Phil approached me in 2007. He had actually been asked to do ghost tours. Being a historian, some of his friends had approached him and said, hey, could you tell us about the local lore of New York City? Now this is about 15 years ago, and so he did that as a friend and as a favor, and he got some more requests. But as the years went on, he realized that he was no Clint Eastwood, and so he wrote a script, found me, found some other fabulous tour guides like myself, and in Memorial Day of 2007 started New York Walks and Talks for New York Ghost Tours. And his premise being, why just do this in Halloween? There are ghosts all year round. So we get decked out in costume to help make it a little more fun. We do this year-round. There are quite a few tours. And we try to make it fun, we try to make it entertaining. Dr. Phil has taken the time to research these stories. So I like to tell people, all of my stories, somebody took the time to say, this is true, this happened to me. I don't believe everything my friends tell me, so I don't expect people to believe all of my stories. However, it was an experience important enough to somebody to say, this is what happened, and Dr. Phil has found those for us. He has quite a few tours now. As you said, this is my favorite, Peter Stuyvesant and his ghostly friends. We have Edgar Allan Poe and his ghostly friends, which goes around Washington Square Park. There is Ghosts of the City, which is the financial district. On the Upper West Side, which includes John Lennon.
Everybody's favorite ghost.
And Grand Central Terminal. Believe it or not, it has quite a ghostly past as well.
So we're here in front of St. Mark's Church, and it's the starting point of today's Peter Stuyvesant tour. So what is the significance of this location?
Well, Peter Stuyvesant, he was the last Dutch governor of New Amsterdam. We forget New York was New Amsterdam originally. He was also, in my own words, if I may say, a bit of a religious fanatic. And as such, I suspect that may be why he's known to haunt here at St. Mark's Church so hard. This was originally his family parish. What we see here, it's actually from the late 1700s. This building was consecrated in 1799. It was built over the original family parish. It was part of the agreement. The family had given this property over to the Episcopalian Church and said, we'll give this to you as long as the family is allowed to continue to be buried here. The last family member was actually buried here in 1952. There's a vault here where the entire family was laid to rest. I think that's a big part of the haunting, is you have this guy who is set on making sure the whole world follows his religion and making sure that his family legacy is here permanently, and now he finds himself buried in what is for him would have been a completely different religion. A lot of the hauntings, they say, it started, the commissioner's plan of 1810 was when the city said, okay, we're going from a little farm town and we're expanding up north, and they come up with the grid system that we know and love about New York City. So this is about the area around here in 14th Street where the streets go from being crazy little farm roads that make no sense to the grids. that we know north of 14th Street. And so what they did was they took 2nd Avenue right through what was the cemetery for Peter Stuyvesant. And I don't think he liked it.
Yeah.
Because we have the church steeple here. In the middle of the night, the bells start ringing. And back in the day, you just didn't ring the bells unless there was an emergency, it was service, there was a death, it was a wedding, something really important spiritually, religiously. The entire neighborhood comes running to the church. They find the doors locked. They break into the church. They search it from steeple to cellar. And guess what they find?
Ghost? No one here?
Absolutely nothing.
And there's a bell ringing.
And the bells are ringing. So everybody's like, okay, that's weird. But in the morning, when they come back to the church, they find the rope from the bell by Peter's grave.
Wow, eerie.
Well, that's not all. About a century later, when they widen 2nd Avenue, I don't think he liked it any more than the first time. Because once more, the church bells start to ring wildly at night. The whole neighborhood comes running to the church. Once more, they find the doors locked. They break in, they search it from cellar to steeple. And this time, they find the rope cut so high that no mortal man could have possibly climbed up there. And once more in the morning, the rope was by Peter's grave. Several fires in the 70s weakened the church, and so this is not the original steeple. The bell now rests in the cemetery right by his tomb. When his last descendant was buried here in 1952, everybody said, this is it, no more ghostly activity. Maybe the old ghost has finally found peace. They heard tapping throughout the funeral procession. There was a lot of paranormal research done. They have pictures that can't be explained. People in the background, possibly ghosts that eyewitnesses say weren't there. So everybody's like, this is it. He's finally gotten it out of his system. What more could there be? What do you think? Peter Cooper, he was kind of a magnanimous guy. He went from rags to riches. He designed America's first steam engine, creator of Jell-O. Well, he made so much money off the steam engine and Jell-O that he wanted to give back. And funnily enough, to the day he died, he'd sign his name with an X. So his thought was, you know, if I just had an education, think of what I could have done. So he created America's first truly free college. It's one of the colleges that is actually still truly free. Now, the reason why we're here is because, do you know the story of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory?
I do not.
It's the eastern half of NYU's main campus building. And you had 143 women die on March 25th, 1911. It was the last legal sweatshop in New York City. And these women were literally locked into work. They might get unlocked 5 minutes for the bathroom, 10 minutes for lunch. Back in the day, if you were working class, you would wear a shawl. And if you were middle class or better, you wore a bonnet. Now, these women, they might literally have worked from the time they could walk. You know, little baby fingers worked great in little factory machines. I mean, mommy might have strapped you to her back and taken you to work before you could walk, and when you could walk, you might literally be hired. There was no guarantee you'd get paid at the end of the day. There was no guarantee you'd have a job the next day. If your finger got lost in the machinery, if your life got lost in the machinery, that was your problem. So when you're living in this kind of environment and you're working in this kind of environment and you're a young lady, guess what your goal is?
To get the bonnet?
To get the bonnet. You want to go on a hot middle class date or better. Back in the day, social climbing. You want to go on a hot middle class date, and the last thing you want is your hot middle class date to find out that you're really working class and you belong in a shawl. So these women asked for hooks on the wall in the factory so that they could hang their bonnets so they wouldn't get factory soot on the bonnet. Management said no. The women went on strike. The only reason why more people didn't die on this fire is because they hadn't finished rehiring from the strike. When the fire broke out, The women ran to the doors were locked. They literally broke the locks off the doors, but the doors opened inwards, not outwards, on 143 bodies pressing against those doors meant they never got them open. So the women ran to the fire escape, but all of these women on the fire escape caused the fire escape to fall. It collapsed. The fire department came and they raised their ladders. Now that building and the building here of Cooper Union, they're both grandfathers to skyscrapers. They're some of the first buildings in the world to be built with steel beams, which means suddenly our building goes higher than the 6th floor. When the fire department showed up, their ladders only went to the 6th floor. So these women up on the 8th floor, the 9th floor, and the 10th floor had no way of escape. They pulled out nets, but the women were falling so far, so fast, so hard that they bounced right off the nets or they fell right through. So 143 women died in that fire. People walking by said, why are they throwing bolts of cloth out of the windows? They should be saving themselves. Those were their dresses, fluttering in the wind. So what do you do with 143 bodies?
Take it to the free college?
You take it to the free college. This building also has the largest indoor meeting space of its time, the Great Hall. Again, thanks to those steel beams. And those women were brought to the Great Hall, and a lot of them were held here for identification. So on the anniversary of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, March 25th, 1911, there are people, those who are very sensitive, who claim that they'll smell burnt flesh throughout the school. The eastern half of the NYU main campus building, where the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was, it's now mostly used for storage, but there are a few classes there. And I actually know people who, when I went to school there, hated having class over there because they were sure they could hear the screaming of those women. In fact, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, it's the 3rd greatest loss of life in New York City, the first now being September 11th, and there are a lot of comparisons, tragically. Aren't you glad you're not a woman in 1911?
Well, I would clearly have a bonnet.
We're in the Cellar of Il Buco, and this place, if you can believe it, inspired Edgar Allan Poe's The Cask of Amontillado.
Oh wow, and he's known for his creepy, weird writing.
Well, Edgar Allan Poe spent a lot of his adult life here in New York City. They say that he lived for a couple months here on the 3rd floor, and the reason why they say this is because they had letters coming and going from the 3rd floor to him here at the location of Il Buco. And this was the red light district when Edgar Allan Poe would have lived here.
So that's why he chose this place.
Well, he was known for tumbling down the stairs into the cellar to have himself a little nip. And he was also famous for not being very good at handling his alcohol. So they'd say he'd get ragingly drunk on just a thimbleful of wine. So what more appropriate space could there be for the inspiration of his story set in Italy, where a friend buries a so-called another friend in the cellars, the catacombs of Italy, trying to lure him into the catacombs, saying, come, taste my Amontillado. Tell me if it's really steel that I think it is. And then chaining him into the catacombs and burying him alive,
there might be some truth to that story, maybe?
Well, actually, the story so well describes this cellar that for a long time people thought maybe Edgar Allan Poe does know something that other people don't. Maybe he knows about a body that's actually buried in the cellar. So it was around the time of World War II that NYU got a grant to excavate the cellar and see if maybe there was a body buried here. And you know what they found?
A body?
Nothing. He was a great storyteller.
Oh.
But it's been said that occasionally you can pull a bottle of wine from the cellar here, perfectly sealed, and open it up and find absolutely no wine in it. So maybe Edgar Allan Poe is still having a nip. And there have been rumors that maybe, while staff were closing up the restaurant, they might hear the poetry of Poe wafting up from the cellar into the main dining room.
Suddenly it became a tapping, someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, nothing more. How distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December.